what are the highlights of your career?
Well, I think a lot of my highlights, Corrine, would relate to the satisfaction when one of my PhD students has done a really good PhD. Because, you know, when you get to my age and you look back on a scholarly life, you have a lot of good students. And if you combine all of the things that your best students has done, it's such a huge mountain of accomplishment compared to the small hill of accomplishment that you personally have done. So you get that feeling as you become an older academic that accumulated and ongoing, and you start to look forward to your own mortality, and you begin to think, oh, well, you know, this mountain of their contributions, some of them built on my own, others, them striking out in a completely independent direction from my own direction, you know, carries the work forward in new and fresh ways that are better than you could do if you could live forever. And there's a kind of a satisfaction in that relationship between the academic and their students. For me, that's a big thing. And also with a PhD, it takes so long, much more so than an honours thesis is kind of a race, but a PhD thesis is a long distance event. So you've been working at it for a long time. So that makes it very satisfying when it finally does come to fruition.
Yep. So you've passed it on to the next to the next generation, as it were.
Yeah.
What
very rewarding.
Well, at this stage, I'd just be rewarding to get my own PhD, let alone. What are the most challenging parts of your career?
Oh, I think sometimes university bureaucracies can be difficult. They can be difficult for students, as I'm sure you and many of your colleagues have found, and they can be difficult for professors as well. In the era of the contemporary marketised university, I sometimes feel that we, as an institution, become, you know, less open and less independent, less open flourishing of ideas than we should have stuck with. That's been a bit of a frustration, I would say. You know, commercial funding. As a criminologist, you get interests, you know, like the alcohol industry, for example, in my career, coming to me and saying that we'll give you a lot of funding for the regulation of alcohol, and you have to stop and think about whether doing research on alcohol and substance abuse that's funded by corporate players who have an interest in increased sale in the harm, where is that likely to lead? Those matters are quite challenging. In that example, there was, you know, a degree of higher levels of the university feeling that the appropriate thing was to take that funding from the alcohol industry. So some of those kinds of things are difficult. I found difficult.
When you start thinking of the validity of this research, when it's founded by somebody who really is going to benefit or not.
Yeah. And there's some good systematic research on that. I mean, as I mentioned before, one of my topics has been corporate crime in the pharmaceutical industry. And of course, universities should not ban funding from the pharmaceutical industry, because that's very important to pharmacological research that allows societies to respond to big challenges like COVID. But on the other hand, we know that with research that's funded by private pharmaceutical companies compared to evaluation research on drugs that's funded by National Health and Medical Research Councils, National Institute of Health, and those kind of government funding organisations. The corporate funded research is 4 times as likely to find that the drug is effective and without side effects. So one has to conclude that the privatisation of funding, which has been the trend, I mean, in the United States, for example, it used to be the case half a century ago that about 20% of funding on research on pharmaceuticals in universities was from the private sector, and in recent decades that's been well over 60%, I think over 70% now.
So there's a bit of a conflict of interest there.
Yeah, it's a structural problem, and it's a struggle to think through what's the right answer to it. There are no simple answers to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've had it during my lifetime. There's been this very troubling tendency as well for government organisations, state and Commonwealth, to put clauses in contracting with charitable organisations. So you can have this money to do this, but one of the conditions is that you're, in effect, not to say anything critical about government policy in that area. That's become more common as well, which is very troubling. I mean, the essence of universities being effective in their societal function is independence.
Yeah.
And that's something that we need to be, all students and academics, more actively engaged with defending that independence.
I guess as undergraduate students, we don't experience that quite so much just yet. We get to study what we want at the moment.
Well, you have at the Smith family, though. And, you know, it's good to mix. It's good to do what you've done, Corrine, to mix up a life of practical experience and a life of scholarly endeavour, because they mutually enrich each other.
Yeah.
There's a brilliant connection, especially between the Smith family and my criminological studies, is getting these underprivileged children and understanding the importance of their education and a secure environment and a safe home. And that there's definitely, obviously, a connection between that and my criminological studies and my history and law as well.
Yeah, it is. You know, you mentioned a safe home. The criminological evidence that, you know, we study all sorts of interventions to prevent crime, to respond to problems like substance abuse. Well, all of these rehabilitation programs, there's lots of rehabilitation programs that can be very effective, but almost none of them that are effective can be effective for people who do not have a secure home. But a key background condition for most crime prevention programs to be effective is that people have secure housing. And that's part of the core business of the Smith family. So the connection with your practical experience is profound in my view.